Congressman O'Rourke, you're recognized. Please state your name, whom you represent. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Beto O'Rourke. I'm here representing myself and in opposition to Senate Bill 1. This is already the toughest state in which to vote, bar none. No online voter registration, as we have in 40 other states. 750 polling place closures over the last 8 years, more than double the next closest state, and most of those closures concentrated in black and brown neighborhoods throughout the state of Texas. A gerrymander of our political subdivisions that's been called a racial gerrymander by a 3-judge federal panel, and voter ID laws that disproportionately disadvantage black voters, brown voters, young voters, older voters, and voters with lower incomes. On top of all of that, you are now proposing a set of restrictions in this elections bill that's going to make it that much harder for millions more of our fellow Texans to cast a ballot and participate in what we all know to be the world's greatest democracy. Whether it's ending 24-hour voting or allowing free rein to poll watchers and making it harder to be able to vote by mail and an absentee ballot, this is going to make it tougher, not easier, for those who should have a say in our elections. And I encourage you to remember the sacrifices and service of those who made our democracy possible. 77 years ago, men from every single one of your districts went overseas to fight fascism and defend democracy and the right to vote here at home. 60 years ago, men and women from each of your districts marched in the effort to gain civil rights and voting rights for every single American. And some of them were willing to risk their lives, and some of them lost their lives, paid the ultimate price so that those of us here today could vote and participate in our elections. Will we honor that sacrifice, or will we squander it in an elections bill like the one that you have proposed here today? An elections bill that is premised on a lie that there is widespread fraud in our elections, even though there is not. A solution in search of a problem that's going to disproportionately hurt and harm some Texans more than others. I encourage you, in closing, to pursue a better bill, one that would allow for automatic and same-day voter registration, online voter registration. I listened to Senator Powell, and I agree we shouldn't have members of Congress or the state legislature choosing their voters. It should be the other way around. So have an independent redistricting commission if you want to focus on a problem that we really have here in Texas. For the authors of this bill, I encourage you to contest elections on the merits of your idea and the track record that you have developed over the course of your service. And for those who support democracy, the Democrats in this room, I encourage you to fight with all you have. Do whatever it takes to make sure that we preserve the right to vote in the state of Texas. Thank you.
Members, questions? Senator Menendez, well, before I go to Senator Menendez, members of the committee.
Senator Powell has a question.
Senator Powell, you have a question? Senator Powell, do you have a question?
Yes.
You're recognized.
Mr. Chairman. Congressman O'Rourke, I want to say a word of thanks for your efforts to register voters all over the state of Texas. That's obvious, I'm sure, to every single person in the room today. And it's a courageous effort on your part, and as a public official, I'm grateful for your work. My question to you on this particular bill is there are lots of restrictions in this bill that have to do with voter registration. And I want you to speak to that piece just a moment, to talk about the importance and of what you're doing and how this bill may restrict that effort.
Senator Powell, I mentioned at the outset that we rank dead last in ease of voting in the United States. And I think despite record turnout in relative terms in Texas in 2020, it still left us 44th or 45th in the country in the rate of voter turnout. That is not for any lack of love of democracy in Texas. We love this country, and we love our elections, and we want to be able to freely and fairly participate in them. But when you have 7 million of our fellow Texans who are eligible to vote in 2020, arguably the most important, hotly contested election in our history, 7 million who did not vote, you know that you have a problem. At least 2 million of them were not yet registered to vote because we make it very hard to do that. We don't allow for online voter registration. If you become a volunteer deputy registrar to register voters, you have to do it on a county-by-county basis, and there are 200 And 54 of them, as you know, I'm a VDR now in 15 of those. So, I've only got a little more than, 240 to go before I'm registered in all of these counties. But it shouldn't be that hard. We should move forward in such a way that makes it easy to register, make it automatic. I know that we ask our school principals to take on the task of registering 18-year-old voters. They've got enough on their plate without the necessary funding to achieve their primary responsibility, which is unlocking that love of learning in front of every child in that classroom in their school. We're now asking them to register voters, and we're not enforcing the law. Make that automatic. You turn 18 in this country, you are registered to vote. Make it same-day voter registration. You just moved here from Arkansas or Oklahoma or California or New York. You forgot to update your voter registration information. You want to vote in this election for county commissioner? Let's let you do it when you walk into the polling place. There are ways to safeguard that and ensure that we have the security so that we maintain the integrity of our elections. And I understand that that is paramount, and I'm with you on that. But there's a way to do it that also expands access and ensures that more of our fellow Texans can have a say in this. So whatever the issues are that we care about, healthcare, jobs that pay, an economy that works for everyone, we're only going to achieve them when everyone has a seat at the table and a voice that is heard and a vote that is counted. And we are effectively leaving 7 million of our fellow Texans out of these conversations and these solutions right now. A great first step would be to make voter registration a lot easier than it is today.
Well, I won't ask you another question, but I will say with gratitude how much I appreciate your comments about our courageous men and women who have fought to preserve our democracy in this nation. My dad was a veteran of World War II and fought in the Battle of the Bulge and the Bridge at Remagen and Hurtgen Forest, and had a lifetime of understanding what integrity came of that sacrifice. And part of this bill that concerns me the greatest is the fact that we have a signature matching issue. My dad lost all of the fingers on his right hand in the last 7 years of his life, which made it really difficult for him to complete his signature. So there are many issues about this bill that concern me. That particular issue concerns me the most because I know that there are many of our veterans of foreign wars, the military men and women who have served so valiantly that are impacted by the provisions in this bill, many of our disabled veterans. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for mentioning our veterans. And with that, I will
Members, any other questions before I go to Senator Menendez? All right, Senator Menendez, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I promise I'll keep you all from getting sick after this. You mentioned Congressman O'Rourke, you mentioned you are registered to be a volunteer deputy registrar in 15 counties, correct? Is there any different requirement among the 15 counties? Is there any reason that you don't see that we could have a statewide deputy registrar? I have a bill. Is there any impediment to once you register that you couldn't register people as you travel around the state? Do you see any impediment to that?
I don't see any reason not to. There is a slightly different process in every county. I know that Senator Zaffarini's not here, but no offense to anybody else, but Webb County might be the best. You get a certificate with a big gold seal on it and a badge that you can wear around town, and now you're street legal in Laredo to register voters. Others, it's just a clerical process. Some you have to hand in a receipt in triplicate after you've registered a voter. Others, you have to maintain a log of every single voter that you've registered within that county. Some don't require any of that at all. So yeah, I think it'd be great if we standardize that with a focus on ease of registration. And again, I think it's perfectly possible to satisfy all security and safety and integrity arguments while still making sure that more of our fellow Texans can vote. And I think that's what we want. I mean, some of you are Republicans, I'm a Democrat, but I think we want to win these contests on the merits of the argument and the ideas and the vision that we offer. We don't want to win because we've excluded effectively and functionally millions of our fellow Texans from participating in these decisions that will impact all of our lives for generations to come. I mean, I think that's what makes us the exception in world history and on the face of the planet today, that we can peacefully, nonviolently decide together how we are going to move forward. Most of the rest of the world cannot pull that off. And I really fear, men and women of this committee, that we are very close to losing that, because it's not just Texas. It's what passed in Georgia and in Florida and in Iowa and in more than a dozen other states, severely restricting the right to vote. It was the insurrection attempt on the 6th of January, which tried through violence to overturn a lawfully, legitimately, democratically decided election. It is the big lie that is the source and inspiration for so many of these voter suppression bills. I mean, some of you are akin to the arsonist who wants to light the fire and then get credit for trying to put it out, because you say, look, there may not be a statistically meaningful level of voter fraud, but my constituents are worried about it. Well, why are they worried about it? It's because you keep talking about a problem that doesn't exist. And then trying to apply a solution that is in search of a real problem. I mean, if you're looking for something, more than 700 of our fellow Texans died because we couldn't keep the power on in February. Let's fix the electricity grid. I mean, to answer Senator Nelson's question, I mean, how much are we willing to tolerate? How many Texans, how many kids are we willing to tolerate who will lose their lives because we cannot keep the grid running? We can't feed them. Or how many people will die of diabetes because they don't have health care in this state? So there are very real problems that require our attention and our focus. This just does not happen to be one of them.
So participate in the democratic process of voting, that so many people have given their lives so that we have this incredible country, that we have free and fair elections, which I believe we do. So what is the impediment for young people and others not to vote?
Yeah, we talked about voter registration. Making that easier would allow a lot more to vote. Let's remember that the minimum wage in the state is still $7.25 an hour. So I've heard from potential voters who would like to participate. I just literally can't afford to do it, Beto. I'm working not one, but two or maybe three jobs at $7.25 an hour. My second shift gets off at 2 a.m. I could vote for the first time in my life in Harris County because they offered 24-hour voting, they would tell me. Now you're talking about taking away that ability to participate. The idea that poll watchers could intimidate you and question you, and for folks who have never voted, and unlike your parents in the story that you just told us, maybe they didn't have a mom and dad who voted or taught them to vote, and this is the first time that they're going to vote. If they're going to be questioned and intimidated and their shoulder's going to be looked over while they're trying to vote, they may just say, the heck with it. Or if they have to wait in a 6-hour line outside of Texas Southern University in order to vote, they may say, you know what, I don't have 6 hours. I've got to work those 2 or 3 jobs that allow me to put food on the table and pay a rent and raise my kids. So there's a lot standing in the way. And again, I would never, ever judge those who did not vote in our elections and yet were eligible. I'd try to find out what was preventing them from being able to do that. And these are some of the things. And so I encourage you on removing 24-hour voting, removing drive-through voting, making it harder to mail in an absentee ballot, the signature matching requirement. I'm sure all these came with the best of intentions. I want to believe that. I just tell you that the impact and the outcome will disproportionately affect those who are already not voting in numbers commensurate with their population in this state. Let's make sure everyone has a say, right? Whatever party we happen to belong to. And I know that we will get something better for the state of Texas.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, members.
Members, any questions? Senator West, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And Congressman, thank you very much for being here. And I just want to talk about one area in terms of accessibility. Rightfully so, you said approximately 7 million people did not vote. Okay. In terms of our industries in this state, would you agree with me that the service industry is probably the largest sector of employment in this state? I don't know for a fact, but I'm thinking that it is.
I don't know for a fact either, but I would agree that if not the largest, one of the largest.
One of the largest. And some of the people that and I don't know this, but I just surmise that a lot of people that aren't voting are probably working in the service industry. okay? And I mean, I don't know that, but I bet you that there is some correlation between it. And so looking for means to make certain that they have opportunities to vote, Harris County, the motor voter, and the 24 hours, that gave those individuals other opportunities to vote. Yes, there were issues associated with it, but we should be able to work those issues out like anything else. But begin to get outside of the box to open up other voting mechanisms or opportunities is what we should be striving for as a state. Given the fact that we had from the very beginning, the author of the bill said that we now have more people voting in the state of Texas, we should continue to try to get more people to vote in the state of Texas. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And so I would hope that all of the talk, Mr. Vera talked about us coming together in order to get something done, as opposed to having a problem looking for a solution. And we've said that over and over and over again as Democrats, but by the same token, our Republican colleagues want to make certain that there's integrity, and all of us want to have integrity. We want transparency, and we also want access to the ballot. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. And Senator West, I know this is not lost on you or your colleagues, but when I walked in to this building this morning at 7:30, I was in the company of so many people who are behind me who may be testifying in favor of this bill, they may be testifying in opposition to it. But this is an indication 11 hours into the day so far, with many more to go, that we're in for the distance, and we love this democracy. And it's not about party, and it's not about a given candidate. It's not even about a policy. It's about making sure that what Lincoln called the last best hope of Earth will persist beyond this generation. It falls to us, as it did, I mentioned the World War II generation, the Civil Rights generation. This is our generation's opportunity to continue that fight and to preserve the right to vote and to expand democracy where possible. I mean, the people of Texas are with you on this one, and they're not with you as Democrats or Republicans. They're with you as Americans who are deeply proud of the heritage of this country and the sacrifice that made it possible. And I just want us all to honor that. And I know there's a way to do that. And I love, having listened to you throughout this hearing, the talk and the real effort to find a bipartisan solution to some of these challenges, but let it not be at the expense of the voter and their ability to cast a ballot. And that's frankly what I worry about. This is already the toughest state in which to vote. Don't make it any tougher. If anything, you got to be working towards increasing and improving access for all voters, especially those who've historically been the targets of voter suppression and voter intimidation.
One last question. You're familiar with the disparate impact analysis. Don't you think that to determine whether or not this has an adverse impact, a suppressive impact on Latinos and African Americans, that it would be wise that before this bill is passed, that there should be a disparate impact analysis by the author of the bill?
That makes a lot of sense to me.
Makes a lot of sense to me, too.
Senator West. I tell you, listening to the Texas Civil Rights Project, who've analyzed prosecutions from the Attorney General's office over the last 5 years for election code violations, I think 72% of the prosecutions have been against black and brown voters. Is that by chance? Is that a disparate impact that we should look at when we're adding more penalties to the criminal code and increasing the violations or the consequences for violations of the criminal code? When we look at who used 24-hour voting in Harris County, disproportionately black and brown voters. When we looked at drive-through voting in Harris County, disproportionately black and brown voters. We should do that. We should know, because I know, although I don't know him personally, I've had a chance to watch and follow Senator Hughes, and I know that would not be his intent to do that. And I'd like to think that he'd want to know, even if it weren't the intent and that was the impact and the outcome, know that and then change or tailor the bill appropriately so you're not unintentionally harming a population that, by the way, historically has been the target of voter suppression ever since the end of Reconstruction. The all-white primary, the poll tax, the literacy test, the annual re-registrations, since the Shelby decision, the polling place closures, the voter ID, the racial gerrymander of this state. At what point are we going to stop targeting these fellow Texans for suppression and intimidation and begin doing everything within our power to expand access to the ballot box. I think that is the most beautiful of American traditions, regardless of the party to which you might belong.
And you know, right now, Texas is in the middle of national discussion concerning this particular bill. And so goes Texas, so goes other states. And it would seem as though that if indeed what we're trying to do, and we're trying to make certain that there are no suppressive aspects of this particular bill, it would be wise to make certain that our legislative budget board do a disparate impact analysis before we pass the bill. And if we do that and be able to adjust the bill accordingly, it does become a model for the rest of the country. But if we don't do it, then it's part of the big lie. That's what it ends up being. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Congressman. Senator Lucio, you're recognized.
Thank you. Congressman, thank you for your testimony. I'm glad to hear you mention the word bipartisan, quite frankly, because unfortunately, in Washington, where you have spent a lot of your time, it's highly nonpartisan. I mean, just one party, very partisan, I should say. Two partisan as far as we're concerned down here. We, in this chamber especially, have seen over the years passed many measures. We might disagree with some of the things in this bill, but there's some things in this bill that are good. And in the end, we might not support it, but we still get along, and we get along so much so that this year and years before, we have voted 31-0 to pass a state budget that addresses the issues that all Texans want us to, help them with and work with them with. So I'm glad you used that word, and I hope that people take it at heart because it's important to this guy anyway, to make sure that we understand that we are in this together, all of us. And we shouldn't play party politics when it comes to an issue as important as this one. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Senator Lucio.
I could talk for a long time on many of the very misleading statements that you made here tonight, but based on testimony from folks from Harris County, the drive-in voting locations, 9 of the 10 were put in black and brown neighborhoods. And yet you say the preponderance of those that voted in drive-through voting were of the black or brown neighborhood. Doesn't that make sense if 9 of the 10 drive-through voting locations are located in those neighborhoods, that would be the preponderance of the people? But you infer that that's an attempt at discriminating as a result of that. That is part of the misleading rhetoric that I keep hearing about what this bill does. And so explain how you interpret that as being discriminatory.
Well, regardless of where those drive-through voting locations were placed, the population that is using them and was allowed for the first time a convenience that gave many of them an opportunity to vote, perhaps for the first time in their lives, is now going to be withdrawn from them. So I'd ask you, instead of
But that was
removing
because
that,
that was in their
expand it
neighborhood.
to every
If
precinct.
equal number had been put in non-Blankenbrack
Put 'em everywhere
neighborhoods,
then.
you would have made a difference. We don't know that.
Right.
But it's being presented as though it does.
Well, because it does. That is the case today. But if I like your idea, I think, Senator Hall, you and I could agree on this one. Expand it throughout the state. Have drive-through voting in every county, in every part of every county. And that way, we can truly standardize elections and improve access. I think that's the way to move forward.
Well, I think, no, but I think testimony was with the problem it was. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Senator Hall, hold on.
Question.
Again, no outbursts from the audience, please. Senator Hall, complete your questioning. You're done? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you. Thank you.
You have one. Oh, okay, hold on, one more.
You got it.
Senator Schwartner, you're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Congressman O'Rourke, for your service to our country. I listened very intently to your testimony, And you said multiple times that Texas is the hardest state in the nation to vote. But I would like to hear your response in regards to states such as our current president, Delaware, and then other states, Connecticut, Mississippi, Missouri, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, that offered no pre-election day in-person voting options. Texas has 14 days in which they allow early voting. Besides those states, you have New York, which is less than 10 days, Connecticut, less than 10 days or 10 days. To me, the options of early voting, allowing an individual, you mentioned individuals that have multiple jobs. Don't you think it's a personal responsibility and an option for them to find time during those 2 weeks to get to the polls, to vote, to do their citizen duty? Whereas in these other states, they would be much harder, and again, including our current president's state. What do you say about that?
I think the answer to that challenge that shift workers and minimum wage workers face is to make Election Day a national holiday. And therefore, there's no question about whether you vote early or vote on Election Day or ask for time off. You're just able to do it. But in reference to your question about Delaware and New York and so many of these other states, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that our early voting period is superior to theirs. And in some cases, they don't even have one. But most of those states that you just mentioned are moving in the right direction, meaning they're expanding access to the ballot box. They're increasing.
So they're following Texas regarding the voting parameters.
There you go. Let's put it that way. I'm a Texan too, so I'm just as proud of this state as you are. So that's a great way to put it. But while they're moving in our direction, we're regressing. We're making it harder for people to vote. They're expanding access. We're restricting access. And again, it doesn't have to be a party or a partisan thing. It's just not good for democracy. I mean, the story of our country has been expanding the franchise from, white men who owned property to the electorate that we have today, and to now constrain it again through bills like this one is just the wrong way to go, in my opinion. And so, again, hope that you will consider focusing on expansion of the franchise instead of
I
restricting.
appreciate your clarification about Texas's position regarding the ease of voting, and thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's still 50th in ease of voting, just to make sure that we're on the same page.
And I disagree, but thank you.